everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my one and only ever unhaul. So over the last several months, I've just been kind of collecting the books that I've decided not to keep. At the beginning of the year, I had somewhere around like 175 to 200 books on my unread shelf, and a lot of those books I'd had for quite a while. They were just what was left from the 600 to 700 books total that I'd had and purged previously. And then my goal over the course of 2019 was to read as many of those as possible, cut that down, get rid of those, and then move to only sourcing unread books strictly from the library. I don't know how many books is here. A lot. Not all of these were previously unread. Some of them I had read when I was younger and have either reread more recently or just kind of decided I didn't want to keep anymore. But there are a good mix. There's a lot of YA, middle grade books, some nonfiction, some historical fiction, and even a small selection of adult sci-fi fantasy books that I'll be getting rid of. So I'm just going to kind of go through them. I haven't read quite a few of these, so I won't really be going into any detail about what the books are necessarily about, but I will show you everything that I'm getting rid of. This will be the last one because I'm not buying any more books until I've read them, so I won't be doing this anymore really, but I figured I'd get at least one of the kind of booktube staples out of the way. First, my Tamra Pierce collection. So I've got Circle of Magic, Circle Opens books. There's a couple more. I've got the Alana Quartet, which is I think one of the first ones, and these are set in her Tortal universe. The Protector of the Small Quartet. She writes a lot of quartets. And then I have just Trickster's Choice, which is one of a duology. And I'm getting rid of these mainly because I think I've outgrown them. I tried last year to read all of them because in previous years and when I was younger, I had read some of them, but never like finished out all the series or anything like that. So I was like, well, I'm going to read all of the Tamra Pierce, finish them all out, get caught up because she is still coming out with new stuff. And the Tortal stuff is better than the Circle of Magic books. But overall, I just feel like I've really outgrown them. I'm not going to keep them around for my daughter. I'll let her pick out what books, she wants to read and what books she would like to have on her bookshelf rather than just pawning my stuff off on her because I don't feel like getting rid of stuff that I enjoyed when I was little. Doesn't seem fair to her. I wouldn't want people to do that to me. I dislike it when people do that to me. Next up for a big chunk of books is the Lorien Legacies, I think is what the series is called. There are several. I have the entire series plus all of the short story novella collections. Yeah, that's a whole thing. So I have the whole series plus the first book of the follow-up spin-off series of what happens next after the original series. And I reread them fairly recently. I've read all of these actually. What kind of really pushed me to just go ahead and get rid of them is the fact that they're YA and they have some tropes and some story elements that I just don't typically care for anyway. And then I read the book that comes after Generation 1, which I don't know the name of. I got it on audiobook. I don't know if it says in here what the next one is. Probably not. Oh, Fugitive 6. That's the name of the next one. I got on an audiobook when I was going to Cleveland back in October because I wanted something to listen to on my 4-hour drive. And that one was available, so I got it. And it was painful to listen to. I don't think I made it more than 20 minutes in. And it was just really bad. The dialogue was bad. The storytelling, it was just not good. And so from there, I was like, well, I'm obviously not going to continue. And then I really thought about it. I was like, I don't even really need to keep this entire series because I've now read all the way to the end. What prompted me to reread was I'd not made it to the end of the original series yet. I did that. I don't need to go back ever again, I don't think. So those will be going off. I'm sure someone somewhere will appreciate them. We'll continue with kind of the young adults stuff, middle grade. I've got Bloody Jack by L.A. Meyer, first in a series about a little girl who disguises herself as a boy so that she can be like the ship's boy. And then the books continue with her story like from there. I read them when I was much younger, like middle school probably, and enjoyed them. These two, Sabriel and In the Force of the Night, these are just casualties of edition snobbery. So if you watched my book haul, you'll know that I got a nicer edition of Sabriel. Don't care for this one, so that's why that one's going away. And then this was a case of I was trying to find the first 4 books in this series as like a taller hardback with the dust cover, because her other series are like that, and I wanted all my stuff to match because that's how I am. So I got this thinking it was going to be like that, and it wasn't, and I'll just keep the original edition that I've had since I was in middle school. This is actually a series I do really enjoy. I have frequently reread it. It is young adult. They are very short. You have shapeshifters, vampires, witches, and she has kind of several series that are all interconnected to each other. Very, very good, high quality. She does have a adult series out as well, so I would recommend those. So I'm not getting rid of this because I didn't like it. I still love these books. I just don't want that edition. The Sweet Far Thing, Great Terrible Beauty, Gemma Doyle series, I think, by Libba Bray. Again, read these when I was a lot younger. Don't really remember a lot about them, other than I think they're at some sort of boarding school, and there's like this magic portal world that they go to, and catty jealousy, I think, ensues over the magic. Just not something I think that I'm going to want to reread and re-experience because no thanks. Next, I have 2 trilogies. Apparently at some time in my life, I was into zombie romance type books. So this is the Force of Hands and Teeth series by Carrie Ryan. There are even short stories that I know I've read a couple of at least. And then the Razorland trilogy, well, there's a 4th one coming out, by Anna Guer. Both have to do with zombies, for some reason, and are like these romancy love triangle things. No. I don't care for romance in my stories. I specifically don't care for romance YA because I am not a teenager anymore. I haven't been a teenager for a long time, and so I just cannot go there anymore. I have no desire to go there. Moving into more like young YA, middle grade, I've got The Magician's Elephant by Kate Camlow. Don't really know anything about it. Picked it up because it has a pretty cover. Thought maybe my daughter would want to read it. We could read it together, but no. The Mysterious Benedict Society by Trenton Lee Stewart. Another cover by. I read the first chapter, and it has like a very young main character who is somehow super, super, super smart. And I think he lives like in an orphanage or something, and he's like special. And nope, I don't like that trope. Here Be Monsters by Alan Snow. I got this because this is the book that the Box Trolls, the stop motion animation movie, is based off of. But I read the first chapter, and I think it's going to be a lot different from the movie, and I really like the movie, and typically I don't tend to like both. If I really like something and then the other one is very different, I don't necessarily care for it, especially when it's the book that's really different. So I'm just going to get rid. I got through the first chapter and didn't really want to continue. Dragon Rider by Cornelia Funk. I love the Ink Spell trilogy by her, which is why I picked up this, but I read the first chapter, and it had a talking cat and a talking dragon, and I just could not be bothered. It did not catch my attention at all. I didn't really want to continue reading it, so I'm getting rid of it. Although I think there's going to be an adaptation now. I don't know if it's a movie or a TV show. Probably a movie, but I don't know. Probably won't check it out, but maybe if my daughter wants to go see it. Next up, I have all 4 books of the Aragon series, The Inheritance Cycle, I think, by Christopher Paolini. I enjoyed these when I was younger. Enjoyed them quite a lot. The audiobook is terrible. I did try listening to the audiobook for the first one at one point. I just think I've outgrown this series. It wasn't bad. I remember enjoying it, but I don't have any burning desire to reread it. It's just been sitting up on my shelf for a long time, kind of up there gathering dust, and I've never, like, even had the thought of, like, oh, I could reread those books. So I'm just gonna get rid of them. Someone will want them, I'm sure. Adult SFF. We'll go there before we get into like the weird stuff I never read. First up, some John Scalzi. So I think these are all from the Old Man's War series. So I have the first and second one, Old Man's War, Ghost Brigade, Zoe's Tale, and The Human Division, which I haven't read these two. I did read these two. I enjoy this series. It's kind of a military sci-fi series. Nothing wrong with it. They're enjoyable. I just don't feel the need to reread them. And I don't... Yeah, I didn't like them as much as some of his other stuff. Like, I'm a big fan of Lock-In. And even, like, Red Shirts was really funny, and I recently read Fuzzy Nation. These are just... They're military sci-fi. I don't think I care for military sci-fi, is a lot of it. So, on top of that, they're mass-market paperbacks, so they're the little dinky ones, and I don't like those kinds of editions, typically. Dan Simmons, Drood, Fifth Heart, and The Terror. The Terror has been adapted into a TV show. I think all of these have some sort of supernatural element to them, but are kind of like historical fiction with just a touch. Drood, I know, is about Charles Dickens and something about like a story he was working on before he died, this character. The Fifth Heart has Sherlock Holmes, which is why I picked it up. And then The Terror is about some sort of historical shipwreck or something. I don't know. I think they like, become cannibals or something. I'm not really sure. I never got around to reading them. They are massive. I have had them for years and just never felt the desire to really, the strong desire to pick them up. I mean, occasionally I've been like, yeah, I should read that. And then I wouldn't. So I'm just hanging up the hat on those and letting them go. Next, Lexicon by Max Berry. I recently reread this, like last week, reread this. And when I first read it, which was about 4 years ago, I really enjoyed it. It has this kind of linguistics element to it. It's a sci-fi thriller. And I gave it like 5 stars the first time I read it. But I just reread it and I gave it 3 stars. So it's going away. It's got this like romance angle to it that I just wasn't finding compelling. Some of the logic behind the sci-fi elements just also weren't, I don't think they were fully fleshed out enough to make a lot of sense. Not sure what the antagonist's end game was. Like, that was not clearly defined, so the stakes weren't clearly defined, and there were some really interesting concepts in here about, you know, like privacy and, you know, online privacy and things, and what kind of information we're putting out there for people and what kind of problems we're kind of creating for ourselves. But yeah, it just wasn't fleshed out enough, I think, for me. Shadow and Claw by Gene Wolfe. Didn't read this, don't really know what it's about, but I was reading reviews about it, and it's an old, like a classic fantasy. Yeah, and I just heard some things, and I was like, yeah, that doesn't really sound like my cup of tea. I don't want to waste my time. Diana Trigard Investigates by Mercedes Lackey. Read the first chapter. This is actually like 3 books in one. Urban fantasy, which is not my favorite thing anyway. She's like a witch. I could tell there was going to be some sort of romancy thing probably coming down the line, which, again, not my thing. I just was, I was feeling like it was going to go down the really tropey road of I don't give a shit. So, away it goes. We've got some nonfiction and historical fiction left. This is The Printer's Devil by Paul Bajoria. Didn't realize it was YA. That kind of really made me lose interest. So that's all I can say about that because I didn't read it. The Murder of Dr. Chapman by Linda Wolfe. Also didn't read this. Basically just lost interest in it. I picked it up because it's the legendary trials of Lucretia Chapman and her lover, and they murder her husband or something, supposedly. Then completely lost interest in it and never picked it up for a long time. So, Thunderstruck and Deadwake by Eric Larson. I got these because I really liked The Devil in the White City. H.H. Holmes, serial killer, in contrasted with the World's Fair in Chicago that was going on at the exact same time. That was really interesting. Got these. Discovered, it wasn't so much that I liked the author, but I liked the topic. One of these is about a ship, I think this one, And then the other one's something about like electricity or something. I'm not sure. I think I started reading this one and got bored, and then just never felt like picking these up. So I'm getting rid of them. Not my thing. The rest of my historical fiction, we've got Edward Rutherford. I've got a whole stack of his stuff. I will try to show you, but they are all massive 1,000+ page books. See? Yeah, that's a lot. So these I'm getting rid of, not because I don't enjoy them. I have read 3 or 4 of them. They don't have any reread value for me because they take a couple weeks to read, and they're slow, and there's nothing really exciting. How he does these is he'll pick like a city. So for instance, New York, which I haven't actually read. Let's talk about one that I did read. I just read London. Where is it at? Oh, on the bottom, naturally. Okay, so for instance, London. Just read this at the end of last year. It's the story of London, the city, from the time when it was basically populated, when people started settling there. And then it just follows the history of the settlement up into the city, into modern day, by following families. So you have these generational stories down through the centuries to modern day. And while you're getting the stories of these people from these different families, you're also getting the story of like momentous times in London's history. Interesting. I learn a lot because he does pull from history, so a lot of what's going on actually did happen. Enjoyable, but you only spend 50 to 100 pages with each set of characters before it moves on to the next timeline. So you don't really get too invested in the characters because you don't spend very much time with them. And what start out as like kind of distinct families still maintain that, but there's a lot of like cross-pollinating, so you have a lot of intermarriage kind of going on. And you're following the fortunes of these families. They're interesting reads. I enjoy reading them. I do not want to reread them because they just take so much time. So despite the fact that I've not read all of these, I am going to, I think, get rid of them. I was on the fence about it for a little while because I do like them. But ultimately, like if I were to move, these things are massive. They're a bajillion pages long. I don't want to have to move them. I'm not going to read them again. So I'm just gonna say goodbye. And then the last little stack I have here is nonfiction. So first, Jane Austen by Claire Tomlin. Did not read this. I like some of Jane Austen's books. I find her story interesting, but come to find out, most of her letters and stuff were destroyed after she died by her family. So this biography is based off of letters from other people around her and conjecture and like kind of trying to tie things together. No thanks. I'm not all that interested. The Professor and the Madman by Simon Winchester. This is the story of how the Oxford Dictionary came to be, and the guy who spearheaded it, and then one of the top people that submitted, basically, they submitted like definitions. The guy was in jail because he was crazy or something, and they became friends and it was the whole thing. I didn't read it. After I kind of looked more into it, I decided I wasn't really that interested in it, so I'm getting rid of it finally. Chelsea Handler, My Horizontal Life. You gotta be kidding me. She has a specific type of humor. It's very brash and very a lot and crude. I enjoyed My Horizontal Life. I did read that. I started reading You Gotta Be Kidding Me and did not find it that funny. I was kind of over her antics at that point. So yeah, it's humor for a very specific type of people, and I am just not that people, I guess. We've got Simon Garfield, To the Letter and On the Map. Nonfiction about letter writing and maps. I started reading this and got really bored. I don't know, it was just like history, but not in an interesting way, or like a personal way, so it's hard. It's like reading a textbook, and I don't want to read a textbook, which is why I'm getting rid of these two as well. The Stuff of Thought by Steven Pinker. How language shapes how you think, which I find extremely interesting. I took a couple of linguistics classes in college and really, really loved them. And that was something we sort of touched on a little bit in those classes. And so I figured this book was just an extension of that and going more into it. But it starts out anyway like a textbook, and I am not in college anymore. I don't want to have to like try to parse out what you're saying through all of the academia talk. So I had to put it down, unfortunately. And then The Vikings by Robert Ferguson. I didn't actually read this. I didn't even try to read it. I just am kind of assuming at this point that it's probably like a dry history of the Vikings, which is unfortunate because the Vikings are very interesting and bloody, and I just feel like it's probably just kind of a dry thing, and I don't want to even go there. So that is all the books. My camera stopped, but luckily it was after I got all of that done. All it did was cut out my outro stuff. So anyway, that's everything I've got. Taking all this to half price, gonna get probably $5. It'll be great. But that is all the books that I'm getting rid of. And thanks for sticking around. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!